Hello, my name is Brian Friedland, and welcome to the third episode of Inside the GSC. Today I'm interviewing the Gulf South Conference's coordinator of women's basketball officials, Tasha Smith. Tasha came to the GSC in 2023 and has been officiating at the college level for over a decade. She will take us through the behind the scenes of officiating, her journey to the GSC, and more. All right, so we have another really fun interview today. I'm really excited for this one. Today, I'm joined by the Gulf South Conference's coordinator of women's basketball officials, Tasha Smith, in conjunction with Winter Officials Appreciation Week. Tasha, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And just wanted to start off, how has the basketball season been going for you?
For me personally, it's been pretty good. I really have no complaints. As a coordinator, same thing. We're making strides to be better. Obviously, no one's perfect. We're going to make mistakes in this business, but I think overall, like there's just an enthusiasm for our officials in our league, and I think the status of women's basketball officiating in general is just improving.
Great. That's great. And then so now we'll start getting into this one. And I just wanted to get to know you a little bit more and see how did you get into officiating in the first place and eventually end up here with the Gulf South Conference?
Um, Basketball has just been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. Just playing in the neighborhood with my brother and friends, and then playing, organized basketball in middle school, high school. I was fortunate to be able to receive a scholarship to play Division II basketball at Florida Southern College. And from there, I moved on to coaching for 4 years. I coached at a Division I program, and then I actually coached back at my alma mater. After my coaching time was over, I started my teaching career, which is what I went to school for. And I just missed the game. And I just needed another way to stay involved and to be present with basketball, and officiating provided that avenue for me. So once I started officiating, I just kind of fell in love with it, wanted to, continue to progress in the business. Had no thoughts ever of being a coordinator, especially at the time in which I started this career. But I was approached by the conference that I played in, just, hey, have you ever considered it when the job came open? And I was like, well, not really. But I did. And after 1 year of doing it, I just fell in love with it. So it was just a whole nother avenue, a whole nother perspective for me for basketball.
Awesome. And then, so you spoke a little bit on the coordinator aspect of your career path. And so, for anybody who may not necessarily know what that entails, can you speak a little bit more about what exactly you do as coordinator of women's basketball officials here?
Absolutely. So my sole responsibility is facilitating the games for the leagues. I need to make sure that the games have quality officials on there that are going to take care of the game, that are going to enforce the rules, and just be able to manage the coaches and players and just everything that the basketball game itself involves. I'm also in charge of hiring officials. So I run summer camps in the summer. That way, I'm able to see my current staff and see some potential officials to see if they're ready for our leagues. And then also in that process, I'm involved in training of the officials. So the training starts in the summertime, and it kind of goes throughout the season with plays that they send in or plays that I receive from coaches, just different ways to hone in their skills. So basically, it's training, educating, assigning the officials, making sure personalities match as a crew, and just facilitating the games in general, communicating with the coaches, communicating with the commissioners, and all the stakeholders that are involved in athletics.
Okay, that's great. And then, so this is just something I've always been curious about, and I think many fans are too. I think this is probably right up your alley, but how are officials graded after each game? It's because obviously there are going to be missed calls, or going to be calls that are really good. Is there like a certain way that not necessarily you hold officials accountable, but you keep developing them and let them know what they're doing right and what they maybe missed in certain games?
Right. Well, we don't get graded on every single game. There are games where we have observers that are present. Myself, if I'm present, there's also we do online observations as well. The NCAA Division II national coordinators and their regional advisors are observing games as well in person and online. So basically, if we are observing a game, we do call chart. We call chart every single call that's made. We determine if that call was incorrect or not correct, and then that's how they get their percentages at the end of the game. I think more so than not, the officials are the ones that are making sure that they're held accountable as well. So they, after their games are over, they're reviewing the game film. They're talking about plays amongst the crew. They're sending me plays as a crew to have like, just further discussion on some things. Maybe they just wanted a different opinion on it, or kind of by rule, did we could do this right? So that's more so how it's done, especially during the regular season. Postseason was when it gets a little bit more involved as far as the game grading is concerned.
Okay, gotcha.
Mhm.
And then just speaking about postseason, does officiating change? Because I know with the NBA, they're always talking about, oh, like officials will let certain calls go when it
Mhm.
gets to the postseason, that kind of stuff. Does that change even at the Division two level, or is it just you try to keep it consistent? And that's the most important thing.
The most important thing is the consistency. And if we're treating every single game as if it was a postseason game, then we have that consistency throughout the season. We're not encouraging anyone at all to ever change the way we call,
Right.
because you have to think the players and the coaches are they're used to what we're supposed to be calling, and we're supposed to be showing them that throughout the season. And if we go and we change that up in the postseason, it really affects the way that they would probably be coaching and handling their games. So
Right.
the ideal situation is that we are enforcing all the rules all the time throughout the season.
Great. That's great to know. Yeah, because I always feel like that's the most important thing with officiating is
Hmm.
just be consistent. That's what
Correct.
everybody's asking for. So
Correct.
that makes a lot of sense. And then so just getting back to your path a little bit to where you are now.
Hmm.
During your playing days, I know I wasn't a big basketball player growing up. I
Hmm.
tried. I was more of a Y ball guy. So, but I tried my best, but I digress. But did you have a different perception that you may of officials than maybe you do now, and have you gotten more of a deeper appreciation now that you're so involved with officiating?
Hmm. I definitely have a deeper appreciation. As a player, I don't know that I really paid much attention to the officials. I played for a coach that was very adamant about us not speaking to the officials. Like if there was something that needed to be said, they would say it to the officials. So I never really even paid much attention. Now, there were always those officials that came in and you're like, yes. And then there's ones that came in and you're like, ugh. Um, but I definitely have a deeper appreciation for the work that the officials put in, and what I personally put in for a game and after a game. It's no longer a go work their game, be done in 2 hours, and you have nothing else to do with that game. It's more entailed. The amount of rules knowledge that it takes, the amount of studying that it takes, the preparation that it takes, the training that we do in the summers, and then just the accountability that we hold ourselves throughout the season too, with watching film, breaking down film. It's actually pretty intense, and I don't think a lot of people understand what exactly it is that we really do.
That makes a lot of sense. And then just, and you've touched on it a little bit throughout the interview already, but, officials are humans.
Hmm.
So how do you rebound from missing a call? Because it's inevitable that you're going to miss a call. There are so many calls in basketball that are just heat of the moment, block charge, out of bounds, whatever it may be. Like there's
Hmm.
going to be a moment you just miss it. There aren't enough cameras around and especially with instant replay where you're constantly harping on certain aspects.
Right.
So how do you rebound from mistakes that are potentially made throughout the course
Right.
of a game?
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to happen. We are not perfect. No one has ever officiated a perfect game. And basically, what we have to establish within ourselves and within our self talk throughout the game is we have to have a flush it mentality. So we have to recognize, oh, I missed that one. And then I have to let it go because I can't focus on that missed call for the next five possessions because then I'm going to inevitably miss something else. So basically, what we try to do is we flush it, and we just now it's like a heightened awareness in our mind that and when this next play happens that's similar to that, I can't miss it again, and I know I can't continue to make mistakes throughout the game. We're allowed a couple, but we can't have repeated mistakes. So then, what I would do is I would kind of follow up during halftime, or maybe talk to my partners during a timeout, or obviously after the game is really when I'm going to kind of break that play down and see why I missed it, Like what was I looking at? What was my thought process during that time? And then how can I avoid making that same mistake going forward further or going forward?
And then and then getting into more about anybody that's trying to get into officiating in the first place. What's the number one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's trying to become an official?
I would say have realistic expectations. Um, we all want to be, at the highest level really fast, and it doesn't happen that way. So I would say have realistic expectations and be patient, trust the process, because it is a process. You have to start at the high school level, or maybe even, rec ball or YMCA ball or whatever it is that's going to kind of start getting your feet wet, and then it's progression and control the things that you can control because a lot of us start out at the same level, and some of us move a little faster than others, and we can't worry about what our peers are doing and what they're getting. We have to just kind of keep grinding and keep focusing on what it is that I can provide to the game and what I can provide to the staff. But if you're a former player, 100%, I recommend considering that after you're done playing, just because you have a whole nother perspective of the game. You have a feel for the game, whereas some people that just are rules people might not have that same, just I'm used to seeing these types of plays and these types of situations in the game. But I think realistic expectations and patience and just understanding and trusting the process is just huge. And that's the one thing that's going to continue to get you to grow in officiating.
Gotcha. And then another thing that I've always been curious about with officials, what does the average prep look like? So we've talked about the changes between going from a regular season game to a postseason game. What does the average prep look like going into a game? Is it like you're studying, trying to like figure out, oh, these teams play a certain way? What does that prep look like?
Yeah, we definitely do our homework. Division 1 official, their typical routine is going to be we're usually getting up at 3, 4 a.m. in the morning to catch a 5 a.m., 6 a.m. flight. And then we arrive at our destination. We get into our hotels. Usually, some of us do workouts. Some of us just kind of like to relax, grab a bite to eat, and then we are mentally preparing for the game, and we are studying the teams that we have for that day. And that might mean we watch a little bit of a previous game that they've had. We definitely would go and look at head-to-head matchups if they've already played each other. What happened in that game? Were there any matchups that were contentious? That were we had any technical fouls? Any of those things, we look to see the statistics, who are the leading scorers, rebounders, because then that helps us to kind of formulate our plan for the game. Do they typically play a zone or do they play man to man? That's going to determine how much we're going to be rotating in the game. And then are we looking at a lot of screens that are going to be set? Are we dealing with post play? So we do a lot of research just so we can prepare and know what to expect in that upcoming game. We also want to consider win losses, or is a team on a 5 game losing streak. Maybe now the coach is going to be a little bit more animated, a little bit more, just on the edge. And that's something that we want to prepare for. Or are they just running on this high and they've been winning, 10 games straight? So we kind of think about that. Have they had a lull in the games where they haven't played for a couple of weeks? There's a whole lot of things that we actually do take the time to research prior to stepping onto the court.
Okay. And then, yeah, and then just another thing that I've always been kind of curious about, and, obviously there's a lot of crisis management that happens during a game. And sometimes there are some officiating crews that will be a man or woman or person down during the course of a game. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think in the 76 finals or something like that, there was an official that went down during game five. So they had to officiate the rest of it with
Mm-hmm.
only a couple people. So how do
Right.
you manage if an officiating crew is ever a person short, or there's something that happens during the course of a game?
If I'm aware of it as a coordinator prior to the game, then I'm making phone calls and trying to find a
Right.
backup that can get there. We have had a circumstance in the past where we had to have a men's official step in for a quarter until we were able to get another women's official to come in. We got kind of lucky because there was a men's game following the women's game, and that official came in early. So that has happened, and then a lot of times we're just finishing it with two.
Okay.
We're all prepared. We all know the 2-man system, and we just have to do the very best that we can with what we have. And that has happened. It's happened, at even the highest level where you have an official that gets injured, that gets sick, or they just couldn't get their flights were delayed, or something that happened that prevented us to have three. So we're all prepared for that mentally and rule wise. We know how to handle it.
That's person up mentality. Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
Exactly. We have to be flexible. That's a big thing in this business is being flexible.
For sure, for sure. And now just talking a little bit about your some inspirations. Now, I know a lot of players have inspirations, but I'm sure officials do too. And so and did you ever have a mentor when you were first getting into officiating or somebody that you look to in other leagues where you're like, I really like how they conduct themselves. I want to kind of emulate some of that when I'm officiating.
Yeah, I've had mentors definitely throughout my career. One in particular, Final Four official that's really helped me along the way and kind of guided me. I wouldn't say that I ever emulated the way they officiated, like their style of officiating. I think we all have to bring in our own personalities and our own unique style to the game. But I did emulate their professionalism, the way they handled their business, how they conducted themselves in professional settings. I think that was more so of the thing that like I wanted to do what they were doing, not necessarily how they reported their mechanics or the way they moved or anything like that. I didn't see that as something I wanted to emulate. But I definitely have had mentors, and I've been very lucky to have a lot of people that even when I started this coordinator role that just have stepped in and really been a great resource to me to help me along the way and mentor me in that aspect as well. Mentors are huge, very important in our business for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what did you ever, was there any takeaways that you had or any important lessons that you got from them?
Be professional at all times.
Okay,
Um, Make
that's
sure
a
you
great
just
one.
so we have to manage our business as a business, and a lot of younger officials coming in don't really think of it in that way. But we have closeout dates that we have to make sure we have to have integrity. We have to be honest about our situations and conflicts and all of those things. Those were probably the biggest things. Just everything that I do, it needs to be done professionally and with integrity.
That's great. That's great. And then, so obviously, being the coordinator of officials here, doing your own officiating,
Mhm.
there's a lot. There's a lot going on. So,
Yes.
how do you maintain that work-life balance, and how do you relax after some of these games that can be pretty stressful?
Yeah. A life? I'm not really sure what that is. From November till March, there really isn't much of a life. No, I like to just, go get a massage, when I have a day or two off. In the summers, I love to travel. That's kind of like my happy space is just getting out and doing some things for me. I like to go and play a little golf or hit some balls, I should say. I don't know that I'm really a player, but I enjoy that. That's like a relaxing thing for me to do. But outside of that, like just like during the holiday season, like coming up here shortly, we all have a few days off, and it's just a nice time for us to put basketball away, and just not think about basketball and just kind of have like that rest rejuvenation, so that way we're ready for the conference season. But to be quite honest, at this point in time, as an official working full time and being a coordinator, there just really isn't much time for a whole lot else at this time of year.
That makes sense. Yeah, I feel like with all these, everybody's talking about golf. That's another hobby I'm trying to get into, but not a player, not a player, but I just go
Yes.
to the driving range.
I
But
look for balls a lot more than I hit them. How about that?
and then and then just want to get into the state of officiating a little bit. Obviously, social media and instant replay has made certain calls for better or worse have brought them to light a little bit more, and obviously it magnifies everything. So how do
Mhm.
you provide feedback to officials and try to make sure that they're not getting discouraged just because obviously it may be a bigger issue at the pro leagues, but I mean it can trickle down to other leagues too. So how do you provide feedback so where you're not discouraging people and you're just saying, hey, we just have to block this out. It's going to happen.
Mhm. I think the best advice that was ever given to me is during the season, stay off of social media, because that is just very volatile sometimes. And then there's a lot of people that just don't even understand the game or understand the rules to know what it is that we are calling and why we're calling things. So it just kind of compounds things when there's people talking about things that they are unaware of. Outside of that, it's just like I said, we have to have a strong mental state. The scrutiny on us is it's there. It's apparent. It's huge. Now that we have women's basketball in this amazing state, and everyone is watching the game, and there's just like another excitement about women's basketball. That then makes everything else more visible. A lot more games are televised. A lot more games are streamed. So obviously, if there is a missed call, it's going to be blown up and blown out of proportion, or just made a big deal. So we just have to understand that what we have to self-reflect, understand what it is that we are doing, why we're doing what we're doing, and just try to block out those outside resources, because sometimes they're just really detrimental for us as officials.
That makes sense, and that's a great mentality to have. And
Mm-hmm.
then shows just following up to that, do you have a specific leadership style when you're developing officials, or is it just kind of you're just being you? Like I feel like a lot of people they just say I'm just being myself. It's not a specific style.
Mm-hmm. I think I definitely am authentic. I think my officials and the people that are aspiring to be my officials pretty much know what to expect from me, because I'm pretty consistent. I do think I'm tough and I have high expectations. I hold my staff to a high level of accountability. But at the same time, because I still am involved in this business, I think I'm fair because I understand what is they're going through when they make a mistake. And I stop and I think, for me as an official, how would I want my coordinator to respond to this, or what would be a fair reaction in my opinion as an official. So I think that allows me to kind of take a step back sometimes and think about these officials as people and as humans, and be able to understand and relate to them.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And then I know earlier in the interview you said you're pretty happy with where officiating is right
Hmm.
now, but
Hmm.
are there any changes that you would like to see in officiating just moving forward, just to make it even better than it is right now?
I would just love to see more players taking on this role.
Okay.
I think that's just only going to benefit us in the long run, and just having that perspective inside of our officials. Outside of that, I'm one that whatever the rule is, that's what the rule is. And I we're gonna officiate it the way it's told to us, and I'm not looking for anything to change or to make all these drastic changes to make the game more exciting or what. I feel like that's already happening without us having to do anything extra. So there's nothing that for me I would say I would expect or hope to see change in officiating right now.
Okay, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. And then just getting back a little bit more into career path and everything. So if someone wanted to become an official, what are some ways you would recommend them getting into it?
Talking to your local high school associations, maybe even talking to the official after a game is over, to ask, hey, how do I get started with this? If they're a player, talking to your coach, because your coach can also now put you into contact with with their coordinators. But more so, I think it's just getting into your local high school associations. That's how you're going to really get your start.
That makes a lot of sense. And now we're going to segue a little bit into some fun questions, rapid fire. But so, what is the best court that you've gotten to either officiate on or just visit? And are there any courts that you want to visit in the future?
Um, Not that I'm biased, because we're not allowed to be. But obviously, growing up, there were just those powerhouses. And I got to officiate a game at Tennessee last year, and that was just iconic. And then I was also able to officiate a game at Indiana. So, when you think about just the overall, like, just gravity of those places, and the influence that they've had on basketball, that those two were pretty amazing places for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've always wanted to go to Assembly Hall. Any of those Big
Hmm.
Ten courts I've always wanted to see. But
Right.
um,
Yeah.
and then so what is your favorite basketball memory, whether it be from playing or officiating?
Hmm. I would have to say from officiating, my favorite memory is being selected for the first time to work the NCAA tournament.
Okay.
And I got to do that at the University of Michigan, which, is another iconic school. Um, that was a very surreal moment, something that I never really expected throughout my career. And then to be rewarded with that was pretty amazing. And then to follow that up with the first time that I was actually able to get on the floor and officiate at the NCAA tournament. So I think those two are my biggest memories in officiating. I think playing just my biggest memories from playing are just my teammates. Just all the fun that we had together. Just growing together and just fighting through some battles together. So I just can't pick one memory from playing.
That's great. Because I mean, the more memories you have, the even better it was. So
Correct.
it makes a
Correct.
lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. And then so we'll wrap it up with this one last question. If you had the chance to go back in time and officiate any, it could be basketball, it could be any sport you like, but if you could officiate any game in the past, which one would you choose? Any level as well.
Hmm. I think I'm just gonna have to go back to I would have loved to have officiated a Pat Summit game.
Okay.
Any game that she coached, it would have just been an amazing experience to officiate her. Also, Kay Yao, just knowing just the influence that they've had on our sport. And we wouldn't be where we are now if it hadn't been for coaches like them. So I think if I would have had just an opportunity to be able to officiate them, to say that I worked for Pat Summit or KL, I think that would be a huge, like, memorable moment for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, when I first started following women's college basketball a little bit more, that was right around the time
Mm-hmm.
that Pat Summit's career was ending, and she always seemed like she was pretty awesome coach and a pretty
Correct.
awesome person. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Tasha, thank you so much for joining me today. I greatly appreciated getting to know you a little bit more and get to know your background, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more about officiating as well, even though I know there's still so much to uncover with that, but really
Yeah.
appreciate you taking the time out of your day to speak with me.
Thank you for having me. This is actually really fun. It's been fun, and I'm hoping that this will maybe shed some light to some other people that are either interested in officiating or to help them understand a little bit more of what we do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I hope you all enjoyed our interview today. Remember to like, share, and subscribe wherever content can be found. Stay tuned for what we have in store next time on Inside the GSC.